Okay, so there were some questions on the paintbrushes, the size.
Yes, I will go over that in just a minute. I'm gonna go ahead and pin myself. Give us a big thumbs up if you see me full screen. If not, we can make another update. But
Okay.
hello, everyone. Welcome to our paint class today. If you are new here, my name is Megan Van Wart, and I'm so glad that you're with us. I am based in Vermont, and we're gonna have a lot of fun tonight. Now, I just want to say thanks again for being here, but you're doing a lot for yourself just by showing up. So painting is not just about creating art, but it's a way to also support your overall well-being. It helps with stress relief and relaxation. It enhances your brain function, and it improves your motor skills and coordination. So you're getting so much more than you may know just from being here tonight. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and jump in. I will go ahead and let me see if I can make my screen bigger. Linda, if you can make me, you can set me as a spotlight on your end. That would be great. And then we'll go ahead and get started. So as we're getting set up visually here, the supplies you'll need for tonight is always show up with whatever supplies you have at home, really. So I'm going to be using really basic acrylic paints. You can see our inspiration is right over here. I will drop that in the chat window so you have that. But I'm using 11 by 14 canvas paper. I love painting on canvas paper. I can put them in those cool frames behind me, which is really fun. But you can paint on canvas boards, whatever you have. Use whatever paint supplies you have. Sometimes you may be low on paints or not have any at home at a time, but I still always encourage you to join because you can use colored pencils, watercolors. Heck, go to your 5-year-old's cabinet and grab some crayons, right? So we're here just to really have fun with the creativity and to try something new. So we're going to be painting this really beautiful wintry cabin scene. One thing that's really beautiful about this inspiration is, and I'll move the painting over a little bit here. That's the inspiration we're painting tonight. I'll bring the camera over full focus over there in just a moment. But it has beautiful lighting attributed to it. And lighting is a really powerful thing because it adds warmth to a composition. So I want you to take our inspiration tonight and transform it into your own, okay? Let's go over brushes together. So I have an array of brushes. These are really basic craft brushes. You don't need anything fancy for tonight's class. I have a larger brush, which is about a 1/2 inch flat tip brush, and I have a couple of detailed brushes. So just grab a range. You're going to be fine with whatever you have. I promise you that. Paint colors, if you look at our inspiration, blues, whites, oranges. So having always showing up with the primary colors of red, yellow, and blue, you're going to be, I'll teach you how to mix and blend colors. Making brown is easy. You just mix them all together. And we'll probably have some darker colors and some darker undertones of green. So if you want to have any black or white, that's also helpful. Okay. But we're going to have a lot of fun. If you have any questions throughout class, do not hesitate to ask. I'm going to be painting with you along the way. And again, I'm so glad you're here. If you're new here, warm welcome. And I'm sure we have many repeat folks here. So for all the familiar faces, welcome back. And for anyone new, I applaud you for being here to make time for yourself. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started in just a minute. Other supplies that you want to have on hand is a pencil for any composition work. So we'll do a little bit of sketching up front just to kind of ground ourselves. And you'll need a small plate to mix colors. I like to use palette paper. You could use a paper plate, anything you have. I always have a paper towel on hand for any messes and a cup of water. So outside of all your painting supplies, a plate, cup of water, and a paper towel, and we'll be in good shape. And if you have a pencil, that's always a good thing as well, okay? All right, and just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, okay? I wanna make sure the audio is good as we're getting going here.
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Okay, perfect, thanks. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, and I know sometimes people ask if they can have a picture of the picture, if you can post.
The digital version, yes, let me do
Yes.
that now for you. No
That'd
problem.
be great.
Yeah.
They may ask you again.
Oh, this group is always very vocal in what they need, and that is totally fine by me. All right, let me go ahead and grab that, and I'll just save it to my desktop and AARP New Hampshire painting. All right. And I love that everybody has shared where they're from. I'm going to go ahead and drop this into the chat window now. Again, any questions throughout class, do not hesitate to ask. Miss Linda will help me keep an eye on questions. Here is the inspiration for you. It's uploading now. All right. So I want you to show up tonight in any way that feels best for you. So with these classes, I want you to relax and enjoy the process. It's not always about how good your painting is. It's really about you enjoying the process and the opportunity to play with colors, play with forms along the way. Now, with a pencil, if you wanted to do any sketching, that's fine. Every single painting we do, there are 10 ways to approach any given painting. So I just want you to know, sometimes we work our way in the background and we layer our way to the foreground. That may be working on the background details first, and then building in the house and building in the trees, right? And other times, like sometimes with watercolor, we start in the foreground and maybe we would do the house first and the trees, and then we would do the background. But with acrylics, we typically work our way from the background forward. One thing that may be helpful for you as a really easy first step is using a pencil to do your horizon line. Now the horizon line is right here, and I'm just going to draw it it's right at the base of the cabin. This is our snowy area, and then this is our sky. And you can see that this line is below halfway. So I'm going to have my picture here. I'm going to find below halfway, and I'm going to do a basic guideline on where I want my sky and where I want my ground. I'm just below halfway here, and there's a pencil right about here. And now we're just going to start by painting the sky. And this is going to be really fun and easy. We're going to do it together here. And we're going to start out by using blue and white, and we're going to make a really light blue together, okay? So I have my palette paper here. I'm going to put a little bit of white and a little bit of blue on my palette paper or on my plate. And you don't need a lot of blue, and I'm kind of doing them separately from one another. So I don't want them touching because you want to be able to manage the paint colors in different ways. So I'm putting a little bit of white on and a little bit of blue. And I'll show you what this blending process looks like. I'll do it with you here on the video. All right, so a little bit of blue and a little bit of white, and then I'll mix this with you. And we're gonna have a little bit of angling of our brush strokes within the sky. I'm gonna grab one of the bigger brushes I have. And I'm gonna take my big brush. I'm always gonna get it a little bit wet before I get started. And I have my white and my blue. I'm gonna move some of the white over. And I'm gonna take just a little bit of the blue, and I'm gonna mix a little bit of a light blue. And I'm containing the color. I'm not being big and messy on how I blend colors. I'm going to kind of keep it all together. And this is a cobalt blue. This is like this is actually called like a blue lake. It's a very basic blue. And you can use any blue that you want. Just make a light blue color of choice. And you can see I have white, light blue, and that. And I'm going to do some kind of diagonal brush strokes to create a little bit of movement in the sky. And I'm just having fun. And I'm just going to start in this top right corner. Create a little bit of a textured sky. Now, I'm going to do things one way tonight. And I want you to empower you to do it your own way. Okay? So I'm going to take this, and while it's still wet, I'm going to dip my brush in a little bit of water. And I'm just going to blend it in a little bit. And it can come down. But I'm going to leave this bottom left-hand corner, I'm going to leave this pretty open because I'm going to add some yellows in this area. So I'm going to have light blue in this top right corner, and I'm going to have yellows intentionally in this bottom left corner. If you want to take a little bit of white paint and kind of blend this blue in, have fun with it. Bring it over a little bit. We will add some clouds, don't worry, but add a little bit of fun background. You could do a little bit of dabbing. If you don't want to have so much of an angle, that's fine. But just get some paint on. You can't really mess this part up. This is just representing blue in our sky. So I'm just having fun bringing in a little blue, bringing in a little bit of white. So if you're new to these classes, I'm always going to encourage you just to kind of follow along and just try not to overanalyze what you're doing. And it takes practice, let me tell you. I've taught hundreds of paint classes, and I've been teaching for over 7 years, and thousands of people. And everyone paints approaches a little bit differently because everyone has different like painting experience, right? And a lot of folks, I would say over half the people at every class haven't painted in a long time. And I'm going to encourage you to not overthink it tonight. See how, look, use your imagination, right? We have a beautiful blue sky that is appearing. You can have as much or as little texture as you wish. And you can bring this down a little bit more, but I'm dabbing back and forth between blue and white paint. And I'm maintaining the angle, and I'm just having fun. Try to just have fun tonight. Try not to be overly critical. And I know it's really hard. We're all far too critical on ourselves most days. In these classes, I remind you to be really kind to yourself and try to enjoy the process. See this? I have a beautiful, this is my abstract blue sky tonight. And I'm bringing it down. I got a bunch of trees over here. I'm going to bring some yellow. So my line is right here. And I'll use a Sharpie. Don't do this at home. I'll use a Sharpie just so you can see my line. I want you to keep a little bit of white space above this. So see how the blue only came to about here? Don't worry if your blue came down more. No big deal. But I'm having fun. I have a little bit of white paint. If you want to add in some clouds, you can add in some clouds. Just go for the look and feel that you want. I'm not touching this bottom left corner yet. I'm going to add some yellows down there in just a minute. But I'm just getting enough of the blue texturing of the sky. And this is the point of the class where I remind you to take a big deep breath in and let go of any fear, any of, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. That's okay. All good. All right. So when you're ready, I have a little bit of the blue here. I'm going to put a little bit of yellow. I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to put a little bit of yellow. I'm going to make a light yellow to create that bright spot in the bottom corner of the sky. Any color yellow works. I have medium yellow in my studio. I have lemon yellow. I have sunshine yellow. I have ochre. I just grabbed a medium yellow tonight, and you're not going to need a lot of this. So I'm just going to do a small dot, and I'll show you. Small dot of yellow. And I'm going to clean my brush. And my blue is good enough for now, right? I'm not going to strive for perfection. I'm not going to strive for perfection tonight. You're going to enjoy the process. But I'm going to clean my brush well, because if I get blue and yellow together, it's going to give me green. And I do not want green in my stuff. All right, so I'm cleaning my brush. I have a fairly clean brush here. And I'm going to take a little bit of my white, and I'm going to put a tiny touch of yellow in my white. And I'm going to lighten it up just a little bit here. I'm going to make that canary yellow. Now, if you want to make this yellow a little more orangey, you can make an orange, and I'll show you how to make an orange in a minute, just so everybody knows, but yellow and a tiny touch of red will give you orange. If you happen to have an ochre is a little bit more, it's a different color yellow, I'll show you. It's kind of like a nice sunflower color, a little more brown tint. You have ochre, you can put a little ochre down. In these classes, we always take our time to mix the right color, very important. So find a color that you like. I put a little bit of ochre in here. You can see it's getting a little bit more tame. It's not so bright and punchy. if you wanted to pause and make an orange, we're gonna need orange anyway, so I'll show you how to make an orange as well. So I'm gonna do a small dot of red. That was quite a bit of red. And I'm just gonna grab another brush so I can just show you, but yellow and a tiny bit of red will give you orange. So let's see. So there's my red kind of got a little out of hand. But I have yellow right here, and I just dip my brush a little bit. And I'm going to make an orange. So a little red goes a long way to make an orange. And you can take an orange and mix that. This is a yellowy orange. Isn't that a nice color? You can take that orange and you can mix it. Look at that. Isn't that a nice color right there? You can mix that with a little bit of white. This is the bright spot in your sky. So it could be whatever color that you want it to be. And I want it to be fairly light, not too bright. So I want it to be nice and soft. So I'm going to make a color right here. And then I want you to play with texturing that in the sky. So that looks pretty bright on my canvas. I could add more white to it. I could dip my brush in a little water. I'm going to switch back to my bigger brush for this. If you dip your brush in water, which I love doing, I love mixing water and acrylics. It may break whatever art rules, but I love just being in the moment and doing what feels right. And when I paint, and you can use a little water, and look, it's going to kind of blend into the blue a little bit, which is kind of neat. And I'll show you how to do some more blending in a few minutes, but you're going to put that yellow in that bottom left corner, and it's going to create some brightness in the sky from behind. So you can grab a little bit of white, you can blend that in. You can play with maybe kind of creating a little bit of like atmospheric clouds to kind of help. I can do some long skinny clouds, maybe to help blend the layers. There's like a kind of a long skinny cloud right there. Use your imagination, okay? Using a little white will help soften the yellow, especially as you transition from the blue. So you could do some horizontal, long and skinny clouds to help kind of blend one layer to another. These look kind of like fun yellow clouds in the sky too, like the sun is really setting in. So play with just, and I'm being really sporadic about my brush strokes. I'm kind of dabbing and doing some swiping. And you can bring this on the bottom. Again, if it's too bright of yellow, which it may be, mine was a little bright, I'm dipping my brush, look at that, in a little bit of white paint. And I'm softening it. We really just want this to be a yellow glow in our sky. You can have it be as soft and delicate or as bright and punchy as you wish. This is your choice, so you can pick and choose. You are each, your own independent artist tonight. So I just want you to really take on that challenge of being yourself, bringing your own ideas and personalities into this. Everyone's paintings always look different at the end of each of our classes. So you can see I'm bringing the yellow in. And then if I take a couple steps back, I'll say, wow, this kind of looks like a sky with a little bit of brightness on the left, and I have some blue sky on the right. So we're going to take a few minutes just to play with the sky. You can bring in some of these horizontal clouds. I'll bring in some more white clouds in a minute, but just play with getting the yellow in, and transitioning it into the blue is tricky. If you're not used to painting, my suggestion is to use a little water, and you can use your finger to smudge. You could just use the tip of your brush. You could use your brush to do some dabbing for clouds. I love using my fingers in these classes. If you've been a part of my classes before, you likely know that. But hey, I'm playing with my brush tonight, so we all do something a little different now and then. So I have some really fun yellow undertones. To add white clouds, again, totally optional. You can kind of find the top sides, and the top sides of the clouds are the lightest. So you could keep some of the yellows and just start to build clouds. I'm doing it right on this one. Just put a little bit of white on the top side of these clouds. And you can use a smaller brush, but I'm just using the flat edge of this flat tip brush just to add in a few clouds here and there. They could be big, they could be small. Just your painting, so you can do as much or as little as you wish here. I'll put another big cloud over here just to mix it up. Again, this is just background detail. We're not going to spend a ton of time here, but I just want you to know what it's like to play around with different elements in the sky. This is a big cloud I'm making. So I'll make everybody 3 or 4 more minutes. I want you to be happy with the top part. Happy with the sky, happy with your clouds. And if you want to spend more time, feel free. I wanted to spend a few extra minutes here just so you could be playful. And this is just a kind of a fun cloud I'm putting in right here. You can always go back and bring in more blue. If you want to bring in more blue, bring in more yellow. It's totally up to you. Sometimes it's really liberating to be given the permission to just try something new and knowing that your teacher supports you to do that. Sometimes it can be really scary, but it's also really fun to try. And the wonderful thing about acrylic is if you don't like something you paint, you can typically paint over it, which is really neat. We're going to be having a ton of trees and a house over a lot of this, so don't worry too much. Again, I'm just being playful, but I'm going to transition in just a few minutes to the bottom area, which we're going to be doing different blue tones down here for our snowy area, which is going to be really fun. So I'll keep an eye on the clock. I'll give everybody just 1 or 2 more minutes to play with the sky.
Somebody said it's so bright I can't see it.
See that. Let me see if I can turn my light down. Is that better? Give me some thumbs up.
I think it looks good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really pretty. It's a nice background.
Yeah, it's very simple, but it's fun to allow folks to play around with some of the elements. All right. So as that is drying, I'm going to slowly transition us to the next step. We're going to be doing 3 different tones of blues. So I'm going to I need a little bit more white paint on my plate. So I'm just getting a little bit more white paint. And we're all using different types of craft paint. I have some really heavy bodied white paint. I have some really thin white paint. It's just use whatever you have. You're going to be fine. And you might want a little tiny touch of black on your plate too for this step, just to add like a little bit of like a bluish gray color. That's the color I see in this snow inspiration. So I'll show you what I have on my plate. I have a little tiny dime size worth of black. I have some fresh white paint, and I have some blue that I'll use. And I want you to mix, for our next step, I want you to mix a light bluish gray color. So if you look at the sky up here, I want you to make a bluish gray color that's some of the same lightness. So you can use the same big brush. So think of a bluish gray. So to make a bluish gray, you take a little bit of blue and a little bit of white. Always start with blue and white, right? That gives you your light blue. So find a nice light blue. Try to keep your paint all together. And you can make quite a bit of this. We're going to go for the snow area next. If you're not done your sky, don't worry. You can go back to it, or you could keep working. Your choice. Now I'm going to add a little bit more blue. And then if you want to have a grayish tone, which I like, I'm going to add just a corner dot of black, like a little bit of black on my brush, and mix that in. And it's going to give you a gray tone, which I love. A nice blue gray. It's so pretty. If it's turning more gray, just add a little bit more blue. And this is the color of snow. So snow is white or gray, right, in general. I'm going to add a little bit more white. I need it to be lighter. And we're going to start with a lighter color, and then we're going to do some accent details with some darker tones of this. Maybe a little bit more blue. And we'll be using this color for our base snow. We'll be doing some detailed white on top of this. So that's like a nice snow color right there. And I want you to be playful around just kind of painting in a little bit of a scene. So you can paint in, maybe make a little bit of a hill down here, maybe fill underneath this line. I'm going to dip my brush in. I want you just to put this in a variety of areas. If you want to paint the whole thing this color, that's fine. But try leaving like a little bit of a soft white spot here and there and just see what happens. Because a softer white spot is going to represent a brighter snowy area. So I want you to use this color, and I'm using a little water as this is wet to move it around, which is really fun on my brush. So dip your brush in a little bit of water, wipe off the drips, and then put a little bit of elbow and move this paint pigment around, which is really fun and empowering. And see how it gave me a nice base, a nice snow base. And we're going to come in and add some more colors, but you can be playful with how much of this you add and where, but we're really just doing some grounding base colors for the bottom. And anyway, if you want to paint the whole bottom this, that's totally fine. I'm just showing you what it's like to just add paint in different areas. This is where you can kind of choose your own destiny here. You can't mess this part up, I promise. I have a little white spot right there. That's kind of fun. I'm going to leave that. It's a little lighter. You can do a soft brush over with water on your brush just to do a soft blend of the acrylic, which is really fun. And I'm just doing a really nice soft, see how quickly my ground has formed. I have a sky and I have this really beautiful, shady, snowy area. And I'm just going to paint the bottom as light or as dark as you want it. There's a lot of shading from the trees and some snow piles. We can add that in after, but just add in as much or as little of this base color as you wish. Okay, that's your goal here. And if it's uneven in areas, guess what? That's okay. It might make your painting look a little bit more natural. So everyone is going to approach this differently. Just follow your intuition. I have some darker areas and lighter areas. Again, I'm not striving for perfection. I'm just having fun, taking it one step at a time. When we add the trees, we'll add more shading under the trees. When we add the house, we'll add more snow, white snow in front of the house. If you wanted to add a little bit of like snow on top of a hill, maybe there's a little bit of a hill right here, you can always come in and add a little bit more white paint. Maybe I want to add in a little bit of a snowy ridge right here. You can see I'm just coming in with a little bit of extra white, and you can be really playful around what you want to add and where. But take a couple minutes to just paint this bottom area. Basic color, nothing fancy. We're going to add more paint and layers on top of this. I'm just having fun. I'm not overthinking it. I may want to have maybe a little bit more white in this area. Make sure you paint all the way off the edge of the page so you don't have any, breaking lines in one area or another. I just put a little bit of brightness over there. And we'll do more after, but this is just a good start for the bottom. So our progression for our painting tonight is we are starting in the background and we're working our way to the foreground. So we have our sky in place and we are doing that snowy ground, right? If you want to add a little bit of blue, we could do this after too, but I'm going to add a little bit of this blue here. That cobalt blue, if you wanted to add a little bit there to make it look like there's a little bit of shading in the distance, that's fine. We're going to put a lot of trees in this space, but if you want to add a little bit of blue and do some left, right, transition down, you could do a little bit of that if you wanted to. Again, we're going to be putting things on top of this, so this is just a little bit of a fun detail if anybody wants to play with it. Kind of smudging it down a little bit. So this is the color blue, which is my traditional Blue Lake blue. We'll be using that, maybe a darker shade for some of our tree shadows. But I was just having fun with adding a little bit in as folks are working on their bottom area. All right. I am planning on adding more snow down to the bottom. Once this layer dries, the white paint will stick better on top. So these are really just basic steps for where we're going with things. So as always in these classes, take a big deep breath, maybe stretch your shoulders back, gently tip your neck from side to side, stretch your body. We typically lean forward and hold our breath when we paint. So I am here to help you check your posture along the way. I always love stretching in these classes. It feels so good. And again, a big thanks to our friends at AARP New Hampshire for having us. We would not be here tonight without their support. So thank you, Linda and the team, for having us.
Oh, you're very welcome. I love this picture.
Isn't it? It's going to be really pretty.
Yeah.
All right. So the objective and goal is we're going to let the bottom area dry. The top should be dry already, unless you've been messing around up there, and that's okay. But we want both parts to be dry because we're going to take our pencil and we're going to draw our house next. Okay. So we're going to get the house in because then we're going to do the trees around the house. Now, as we think about grabbing our pencil and finishing up our brush strokes, I want you to think about the size in the scale of the house. And you can find an object around you. I like to use my fingers. And I want to have the house be pretty small. So not only depending, I want you to think about the height of your house, right? If I have my house this small, because I want the sky. The sky is telling a big story here. So for me, I don't want the house to be too big because I don't want this composition to be about the house. I want the composition to be about the light and the light reflecting off of the house windows, right? It's really about the whole scene. And that's one of the things you want to consider when you paint, right? And this is like a little, level 2 kind of thinking and really digesting or interpreting the composition. But the size of my house is maybe going to be, I don't know, about 3 inches, 2.5. And I want you to think about placement. So in the inspiration, look at the placement. The placement is not in the center. It's over to the right a little bit. So think about the placement of the house. So I'm going to find that peak of the roof. And I'm going to do a dot with my pencil on where I want the peak of the roof to be. And I'm going to go for a smaller house. I'm just going to see how it goes tonight. So I have a little tiny dot. Let's see if you can see it. Yeah, you can see a little tiny dot right there, right? And this is an A-frame house. So I'm going to bring this roof peak down and down. Not all the way down to the ground. And if you wanted to kind of make it into a triangle, that's fine. But you're going to be building the house underneath it. So I'm going to be doing kind of a rectangle underneath it. Kind of looks like a little kitty drawing right now, but that's okay. And this is just basic lines so we can get going. And then from the peak of the house, I'm going to go over to the right for the roof line. And I'm going to put a big tree right here. So I'm going to put a big tree and I can even do a line for my tree if that helps you all. So maybe this tree is going to be really tall. And I do a line for my tree just to show you. I'm going to have a big tree right there. So I don't even need to paint half of that house. The line went up pretty high and the bottom of the tree came down a couple inches here to the foreground. So if you want to do that line for the tree, you can imagine that tree is going to be covering up some of that house, if that helps you. Now, what I want you to do is, if you want to do this with your pencil, you can, but you can give the roof kind of a double edge, like a double edge on the line to make that roof line kind of come over. It's going to overhang. I do this because this might help you paint And I'll just bring this line over. So I just kind of gave the roof like that outside paneling just so you could see that. If you wanted to take a minute to draw in your windows, you can. I'm going to erase this triangle line on the house. Really cool fun fact. Pencil will erase on acrylic paint that's dry. Look at that. So I erased that triangle line because I don't need it. But with a straight eye, and I'm doing this from the side right now. I'm just going to do 3 windows, and I'm just going to outline these now because I'm going to come in with paint after. Maybe I do 3 windows on top. Take a minute to just draw the house. And sometimes in these classes we do sketching, and this is a good one because you'll get your composition down. So I kind of did 3 windows on top, and I'll do 3 French doors on the bottom. And these windows are pretty big. Imagine that. I like big windows apparently. And I'm just going to do 3 centered French doors on the bottom. And you want these to be as square and as boxy, as straight as lines as possible. And this will be fun because you can just paint and go right around this. So my house will be brown. My doors and stuff aren't that even, so I'll fix this. Because I'm drawing from the side here. And I can fix this with my paintbrush too. But you want the edges of the roof to be hanging over the sides. And if you want to put on, do a rectangle on the bottom for a big covered porch, you can do that too. And I'm drawing right over that background, that bottom area. That's no big deal. So we're doing this for house placement. Okay, that's it. And I'm going to put a big tree right there. So I want you to take a minute to draw your house, and then we're going to paint it together. Your house can be any color you want. I'm going to do mine brown, and I'm going to do snow on the roof. So at a high level, the colors that I'll be using are brown for the exterior, white roof, and light yellow windows that are going to match the sky. Okay. So I'll teach you how to make brown. Brown is yellow, red, and blue all mixed together. If you're still drawing your house, don't worry. But I'm just going to keep moving along for time's sake. But you mix a little blue, a little red, and a little yellow together to get a brown color. And I'm going to switch to a small brush of choice. And sometimes when we take a minute you don't need very much. When you take a minute to do some sketching, it will boost your confidence when you go to fill something in. And let me tell you, when you're doing straight lines, it's really helpful to have something to start. So again, brown is yellow, red, and blue. Another way of making brown is red and green mixed together. So if you mix your colors together and it's too green, grab a little bit more red and turn it brown. Okay, so if anyone has questions, let me know, but just take your time, finish your sketching, find a small brush of choice. Mine's pretty tiny. Somebody's might be much bigger than mine. I went on the smaller side, scale size for tonight. Okay. I have a reddish brown color. I might start with this. Let's see here. I always joke in these classes, brown either happens easily or you have to like work for it. If your brown is a little too red, add a little bit of blue. It'll make it a little bit more chocolatey. But I hope everybody's having fun. Again, it's a pleasure to be here. So I made a nice brown color. I'll show it to you. Kind of like a light milk chocolate. And I'll start with this. If I need to make it darker, guess what? I can always add a little bit of, I always add a little black if I need to, or make it darker with blue. But I'm just going to go around my windows with my small brush. You will likely need a couple coats of paint. That's why we're doing this now. Some classes we do details like this. Not all classes we do this much detail. So it's really fun. I always offer a variety of inspirations in our classes. Sometimes we do really easy things. Sometimes we do a little bit more detailed areas like this. So it's always something a little different, which is good. It's always fun to try new things. So I'm painting around the windows, and I don't know about you, but I want to move in here. This is pretty cute. So I have a little house. You can, again, number of windows, you choose, you know, number, bigger size, big or small, you choose. I'm going to paint my porch brown because I'm going to put some snow on it. And this is just a rectangular porch, nothing crazy here.
I did put out there in the chat where the recordings are,
Oh, terrific.
so people will know. And it's also, if you go there, you can also see the prior recordings.
That's right. All of our previous classes. Exactly. I encourage you to follow AARP New Hampshire's YouTube space. It doesn't cost any money. It's just a great way to stay subscribed and to get notifications when they post our classes like this. But they also have a variety of other events, which Linda spoke to. So I encourage you to check those out as well. And there's an events page that she shared a link, and I encourage you to see what other things they have going on for sure. So to make brown, brown is red and green mixed together. It also is red, blue, and yellow. So all the three primary colors will give you brown. And then the whole A-frame of this house is brown. We'll put white snow on it after, but get the brown paint on there first. And you want the frame of the house to kind of hang over the sides. That's important. And then the whole side of the house here is going to be brown too. Just over to that line. So I'm just kind of extending my house over, but my tree is going to be overlapping some of this. So I'm not worrying too much. And then my roof is going to be primarily white because it's going to have a lot of snow on it. So I am not going to paint the roof because I'm going to paint it white basically. So I'm going to do a couple coats of brown on this, but the important thing with doing multiple coats is to let the first coat dry first. So I have a base coat of my house painted. It's really tiny. If you want to paint a little bit of like white on the inside of the windows, I'm going to do white and yellow on the inside of the windows just so it's nice and bright. That might take a couple coats. So if you wanted to paint over some of the blue on the inside of the windows, again, I want the windows to be nice and bright. You can do that. If you want to put a little bit of brown on the inside of the windows, that's fine too. All right. And I'm just going to let it dry. If you do the dark, yeah, Claudia is asking if you have a log look, you can use a dark brown to give some like horizontal. And we'll add a little bit of dark brown shading as well, Claudia. We're just doing some basics first. But if you want the log look, use a dark brown, or you could even use like a micron pen or an ink pen to do like logs, for horizontal logs. That's always fine too. But you can decide, you know, what you want to do inside of your windows. If you want to put a little bit of brown in your windows, that's fine. We're going to just, any way you want to fill in your windows with a little bit of a look, that's fine. I'm just going to let the windows dry. Mine are really basic. And make sure you keep that rectangular shape. It takes a lot of patience to paint windows, so you can do it. But do one coat and let it dry. It's going to take a few coats to get over that background, which is totally normal and fine. So while my house is drying and my windows are drying, I'm just going to add some clean, fresh white paint and put snow on the roof because I can do that now. So white paint, again, white paint over other colors. You're going to need a couple coats. So always just get a coat on. Try to make it as thin as possible because then it will dry more quickly. And I'm going right over to this line, so I can paint my tree kind of overlapping the house. So I'm just doing kind of a white roof line, or sorry, white roof on this side, which you can barely see, which it will become more, you'll see it more clearly as we get more things going on here. And I'm gonna do a white line on top of the left roof. So I want this to be snowy. So imagine there's that white gingerbread frosting on the other side. So it's not perfect, it's a little smudgy. You can always touch it up, but just get a little bit of that base coat on. And then we're gonna let the house dry. There's gonna be a lot of other elements happening. My house isn't done, but it's there. That's the goal. Okay. And everything's going to continue to evolve from here. So if anybody's nervous and they're like, Megan, where are we going with this? I don't see trees yet. It's pretty boring looking. I encourage you to trust the process. And if anybody's been a part of my classes before, you'll know that. All right. So my house is wet and it's drying. I have a basic house. My lines are not perfect. I'm not worried about it. I'm just letting that first coat dry. So I'm going to be patient. I'm going to give everybody 2 more full minutes to play with your house. And then we're going to do the trees together. Okay. So I'm going to keep an eye on the clock. I'm going to give everybody a couple more minutes, and then we're going to do the trees as a group. And we're going to do green, dark green trees. So if you have a dark green, you can mix a dark green. I'll show you how to do that. There's a lot of different greens out there. Everybody has different paints. So some paints that I have at my studio here is I have a light green, which is this. I have a phthalo green, which is kind of like a fun evergreen color, which could be really fun to use, right? Because it's a little darker and it's a little more rich in color. There's also a like grass green color. So I have another green like this. So everybody has different colors to use. Whatever color you have, I want you to make it a little darker if you have black. If you want to add blue to green, you can make a beautiful evergreen color. Oh, adding blue to green is one of my favorite things to do. But I want it to be a little darker. See how these trees look dark? They look almost like a dark black color or dark, dark, dark green. I want you to come up with a green color that is on the darker side. And I'm going to slowly do that as folks are finishing up the house, finishing up their first steps. So I have my phthalo green I just put on my plate. But you can use that grass green too. It doesn't matter. And we're gonna use a small brush to apply these trees. But I want you to mix this paint first. So I have my green here and I have a tiny touch of black. I'm gonna take a little dollop of black and mix it in. Now this paint is pretty thick. So I'm just gonna take a minute, just like you are now. You can see what this green looks like. It's like really vibrant. I want it to be a little darker. Sometimes with thick paints, you can just dip your brush in a little water. And I like to mix it all together. Just take your time. And you want to make enough of this dark green to be able to paint all these trees. And we'll talk about the size and the placement of the trees in just a minute. We're actually going to use our pencil for placement. That will boost our confidence as we get going. So I have like a nice dark green color here. You can see what it looks like right there. But I'm going to grab my pencil. I'm going to put my brush down. So again, if you're still mixing your paint colors, no big deal. I'm going to grab my pencil. And in just a minute, I'm going to show you placement for your trees. Okay. Now I'll grab my Sharpie. Don't do this at home so you can see my lines. I am bold and just out of my mind in these classes sometimes with my Sharpie, just to show y'all. So I have a line over here. I'm going to do this with a Sharpie because I'm going to put green paint over it anyways. Don't use a Sharpie at home. This is my line for the tree that I put over here. Okay. The tree comes up high and it comes down here. It's going to be closer in the foreground. That's why it's further down. If you're ready to do tree placement with me, go ahead and grab your pencil. And we're going to add some more trees. So in the inspiration, there are tall trees and there are short trees. The tall trees means they are closer to us and they're bigger, right? These smaller trees in the distance by the house means they're further away because they're behind the house, right? So we're going to do a tree, this big one first. I want you to put your finger on the top, where you want the top of the tree to be, over on the left side. And I'm going to put a dot. And I want it to be a little different. I might do it a little higher. So I'm going to put a black dot up there. That's where my tree is. And I'm going to put, and maybe I put my finger down here in the blue where I want the tree to end. So I love doing straight lines for our tree placement. So I'm going to go from the top down. This is our tree trunk. Little scary drawing lines. You are using pencil. You can do this. All right. I'm going to draw some smaller trees on top of the horizon line. One. Maybe this one's a little shorter. I'm going to put one behind the house. This is a little fancy. Look at that. Put one behind the house. Maybe there's another one. You can pick and choose, right? I don't want to do a ton of trees because I want to be able to see the beautiful sky behind. So I'm going to do one big one on the left, and you can see from a composition perspective and where we're going with this. I have another one tucked under the roof over here, and I'm going to have one behind the house. Right? Use your eye visually. This big one is going to be overlapping some of the house. There's one more big one here that's a little taller. So I can do a dot, right? And maybe this one comes up a little bit higher. So a straight line down. We're going to be using paint and filling these trees in from here. So you can see I didn't crowd the painting with trees. There's enough trees to add the forest-like feel, but I can still see the beautiful sky behind it. That's the intent. Okay, I'm gonna put away my Sharpie before anyone gets hurt here. And I want you to have pencil lines that you're comfortable with that represent your tree trunks. And then as our next step, we're gonna go in with our dark green and we're gonna paint our trees together. And we're going to use a small brush of choice. So look around and see what size brushes you have. You started making that dark green color. Now I have, trees take a lot of practice. So I've taught a lot of people how to paint trees over the years. And I want you to think long and lean. Tall trees that are on the skinnier side, then very wide and bushy. You can do any types of trees that you want, but I'm going to encourage you to think about how wide your tree is as you're painting it. So I'm going to take a little bit of this dark green paint. And the other tip I have for painting trees is this. Don't think about branches as you paint your trees. I want you to think about the texture of the tree shape. So as you think about trees, there's a lot of branches and there's a lot of twigs. And you'll get more of a natural look if you paint, when you paint the exterior of the tree and you paint the structure, thinking more organically will give you a really organic look. So I'm going to take my brush. I'm just going to start on this side and work my way over. The top of the tree is always a little bit more pointy. And I'm doing drawing down brush strokes. And there's a lot of different styles of trees. And you're going to slowly work your way down. You're going to alternate from the left to the right. Keep your tree skinny. This can be a darker color, so I might add a little bit more dark black to this. Or blue, whatever you want. I want you to keep your tree skinny. Alternate from the left to the right. I want you to use a small brush of choice. And have fun. Take a couple deep breaths. Find a style of a tree that works for you. Okay, dip your brush in a little water if you need it. Everybody's trees are going to look a little different, okay? They can have lots of branches. They could just be really more solid. Find a style that works for you. And as you get down, you can make it a little wider as you get down. You could easily make a skinny tree wider, but it's difficult to make a wider tree more skinny. if that makes sense. And you can come in and you can, you know, make your tree look a little more organic along the way. Your branches don't need to come down. They could come, some of these branches could be kind of poking out a little bit. Trees have lots of layers and textures to them, so it's not going to look perfect immediately. It's going to evolve as you work on it. So just be really playful, get in the moment. Do that first coat, figure out how wide you want it, and you're just going to rinse and repeat. And I have a little bit of darker green. I had a little bit of a lighter green. I'm just making it darker because we're going to put some snow and we're going to put the light of the sky on these trees too, which is going to be really beautiful. So these are going to become more snowy. We're just going to do snow after. If you don't want, you can control how much snow is on these trees too, which is really fun. So there's one tree. I'm going to rinse and repeat this for each of these trees, okay? So you might need to make more paint. You might need to change your color up a little bit. Maybe you need to add a little bit of water to just loosen up your paint. Everybody, again, is using different types of paint. Go at your own speed. Tops of the trees, alternate these branches to the left and the right sides. These trees here are in the distance. And if they're near each other, yes, they can overlap. This is on top of the horizon line. If you need to make them taller, you can. No big deal. You need to use a smaller brush. As an artist, you get familiar with what brushes you like best. If you haven't painted that much, don't worry. You're gonna get a sense for that. The more you pay attention to your brushes, you're gonna say, "Oh, I really like this one." Right? You're gonna have those conversations with yourself. If your trees are starting to get a little wide, just make them a little taller. How about that trick? Okay. And you can see I have some like natural two tones that have come in here. My green wasn't dark enough, so I kind of have some like a lighter green and I have a darker green. If you like that, you can do that too. That was a happy little accident. Okay, so you can see the scene is starting to take form. Continue at your own pace. I'm just going to work my way down the trunk of each tree using the tip of your brush. Do really light feather-like brush strokes to play with the branches. Use the smallest brush you have or a brush with a really nice tip on it. It'll allow you to play with the texture for those branches. And again, if you need to make your trees a little taller, no big deal. And I like that dark contrast a lot. It's really drawing me in to the scene. And I'm just going to rinse and repeat whatever your style of tree is. That's what you want to go with for today's class. This tree is really behind the house, so I can just be really fun and kind of frivolous and just tucking it in there. Look at that. And then that house edge is coming right over on top of that tree, which is awesome, right in front of it. Because we want that house, right? That tree's behind it. So it's really fun to think about placement of trees, the size of the trees, all those really unique details. And again, give yourself a pat on the back. You all are doing a great job. I'm so glad you're here and you've made time for yourself. And again, a big thanks to our friends at AARP New Hampshire for having us. We would not be here without their support. We know many of you love these classes and you continue to come back. So be sure to share this opportunity with someone that you may have in mind that could benefit or really enjoy a creative class like this, or that would really could use a break and try something new and different. So bring a friend next time. Be sure to share maybe the recording or share the registration link for our next class, and bring a friend. And Linda, if there's any additional information that you want to share along the way that our audience here should be informed of, feel free to do that. But we're going to keep plugging away on our trees. everyone's going to have a number of trees, different number of trees. And again, we're just going to take our time, play with the texture of the tree. I like to alternate again from the left to the right. I really am enjoying the contrast, the darker tones of these trees, because it's really setting the scene for us. We know in the winter, if anyone isn't, near snow, there's just a whole lot of bare trees and a whole lot of whiteness, and the fact that we're incorporating this beautiful glow from the sky, which we're starting to notice, right? I'm starting to feel, maybe this is a spring day, right? We're starting to feel the warmth of the sun on this snowy day. It's really incredible, the power of light in a given painting. And one of the wonderful things that we'll incorporate into our painting today is a little bit of that sun reflection on the trees as well. It's going to be magical. Now this tree is really close to the house, so I'm going to have to cover up some of my house, which is okay. I knew that. That's why I put the tree here. I'm embracing the situation. Maybe this tree is just a little more narrow. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm embracing what's going on over here. But you can play with the texture of the branches as you get going. You can go back in and do touch-ups. It's really quite fun. I'm going to gently make this tree a little wider, which is great. You can see it's just layering. My house is just, my little cabin's just tucked ever so slightly and gently. I love dipping my brush in a little bit of water too. It really helps me get some of those pointed edges. I want to hold the paint pigment to cover up, some of the background, but a little bit, or even a dry brush, which is just not a lot of water on. You can play with which techniques are best for you. I use a dry brush often, but sometimes a little water might help break up my paint a little bit. It's really your choice. So again, I want nice tree coverage. I want these to be nice and, green in color, dark green in color. If you want them to be not so dark, that's fine. But you can see that tree is nice and solid. I am going to put snow on all of these trees again. So we're just getting these base colors in. Lots of trees. I know it. If you want to have some of the trees kind of come down a little bit, that's fine. And I just go back and get a little more paint and I keep working away.
I just love the two colors.
Isn't it? It's really coming through, isn't it? Like the
Yeah.
lights and darks. That
Yeah,
again
that
was an accident.
looks awesome.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's a nice showcase of shading quite naturally. Lights and darks will, provide those highlights, and the darker tones provide shading naturally. All right. So I'm just working my way through these trees. Everyone go at your own pace. If you have the same number of trees as I do, you're likely still working away. So just take a couple minutes. If you are enjoying your cup of tea, please enjoy that tea. Don't let it get too cold. If you need to use the bathroom, do whatever you need to do during this time. This class is being recorded, so that link will be sent out. It will be uploaded again to that YouTube channel. And you can see my trees are pretty tall and lean. I cannot wait to make them snowy. That will be a really fun part after. And on top of the snow, we're going to add a little bit of like orange reflection to the sky. It's going to be quite fun. But again, you can manage and control how full you want these trees to be. So you can go back in like I am and just make it a little bit more dense, maybe in the center of the tree. So it actually doesn't look like a stick with like random branches. It looks like a full tree, right? So you can go in and do touch-ups. So trees are a process. Just acknowledge that and just give yourself a little patience and grace to play with the texture piece. And I encourage you to step away and look at your painting from afar and come back to it. I've been painting for so long, I can do that just by like closing one eye and like leaning back. But if you aren't used to like checking your perspective, I encourage you to actually step away and you'll notice something to add. You'll notice something you want to modify, maybe the placement of a tree or two. Those are choices that you can make. But one thing I want you to look at is the bottoms of these trees. See how the bottoms are staggered. See how the bottom of this tree is a little higher? There's more room on my snowy field. See how these trees are a little lower, lower and lower, but they're staggered. So if you need to bring one of your trees down a little bit to stagger those heights, it will make it and try to change the scene a little bit. So you can try that, sharing that perspective with you for consideration, right? If you need to do that or not. And I have one other little tree tucked back in here. I don't know where this one came from. It just happened. And again, I'm using the tip of the brush. If I need to put a little water, I like to spin my brush on my plate to manage that fine tip. That helps a lot. I'm alternating from the left to the right side of the tree, doing little dabs, doing little brush strokes. You can play with a darker green. You can play with the evergreen like I am. I'm just being in the moment. And that's what I encourage you each to be. I don't want you to feel stressed out. I want you to just take a deep breath. Pretend like your friend Bob Ross is here, just coaching you through, and you're enjoying the moment, not stressing. I am not judging you. You are having a good time, I hope. And you're doing something new and you're getting all those additional benefits for yourself. You're relaxing and trying something new tonight. So again, thanks for being here. All right. So we have our green trees. If you wanted to add a couple little ones in the foreground here, you could. I don't know if I want to or not. Those are personal choices. I think I'm not gonna put these two little ones on. If you want to, you can. For me, I think I like the simplicity of what I have. My trees aren't perfect, but I'm gonna let them dry. And I'm gonna transition us in just a couple minutes to doing some snow, but I'm gonna let my first coat of my trees dry. We need more brown paint on our house and probably more snow on our house. So this is a great opportunity to let your trees dry and go do a second coat on your house and on your snowy roof. Now, some of you may have already done that. I have not. So I'm going to take my brown with a small brush and do a second coat. And these second coats go such a long way. If you wanted to add like that log cabin look, you could use a darker brown. I'll do a little bit of a darker brown accents after, but I'm just sticking with a basic house color first. If you want to make your house color a little darker, you can. Mine's pretty light, but I'm just going to go with it. I am going to add some darker brown details. I'll show you what those look like in just a minute. So I could take a little bit of black and make a darker brown. That's pretty dark. Let's see. Sorry. So if you wanted to add a darker brown line on the underside of these top windows, you could. That's a little bit of a little shading, right, on the house front. You could do that if you wanted to. Anywhere you want to add in a little bit of that darker brown, so I did a little bit of shading there. Another area you can add a darker brown is on the underside of the roof line. On the left side only. So on the left side only, doing a thin dark line. I could be using a much smaller brush. And maybe I just do a little bit of wood-like texture, just adding in a little bit of like some lines here or there to make this look more of like a cabin. So I'm just adding a little bit of brown texture here and there. My windows aren't perfect yet. It's okay. I'm going to go in and paint my windows a little bit now too. But I did my brown first. I'm gonna wash my brush. I want my snowy roof to be next. So do lots of white paint on your snowy roof, and then you can paint your windows as well. So take your time. The smallest brush you have is what I advise for these steps. So look around, see what you have at home. Make sure your white paint doesn't have any glue in it, like mine. And I'm gonna come in with some white paint and find that snowy roof. And you can see it's just really gonna jump out. And I'm gonna paint around those little branches that I've layered on top. Now I could have done all the white roof and everything before the tree, but I just jumped right in. Nobody's gonna. So my snowy roof is kind of punching out. I'm gonna spin my brush on my plate to have a nice fine point on my brush. So it's really becoming familiar with your brushes, your brush tips, and how much paint is on your brush. Kind of like when you frost a cupcake. You want that tip and the frosting to be just right as you frost that cupcake, right? So there's a little bit of the snowy roof. You can see that coming out now more visually. And then I'm just gonna fill in my windows, I don't know, with like a little bit of this and that. I want the windows to just be light in color, but I don't want to see that background. And maybe if they have a little bit of yellow in them, that's okay. The windows are tricky because they're tiny, right? So take your time. I'm going into my house a little bit. With small areas, you need to have a little bit of extra patience. I did yellow, but I can put a little bit of white on top of the yellow, which kind of goes with our warm reflection scene that our beautiful sky is reflecting from these windows. So I did yellow and I'm putting a little white on top of them. Seems to be working. It's giving me a bright window, but it's giving me that yellow tint as well. So you can play with how you want to fill in your windows. Okay, and they're not perfect. I can always let the yellow dry once those are right, and I can do more brown around them to make it, if you're type A and you want it to be perfect, you can always do that. But I'm doing the same thing on the top. I'm just going to make sure I have the right colors, maybe a little yellow accent on some of these just to show the yellow in the sky. Okay, it's warm, it's well lit in my home. I'm excited about that. I'm going to put a little bit of snow on the top rail of my porch. I'm not going to go draw a railing in, but I am just going to do like a white line on the top of my rectangle. Keep it easy for us here. So I have a rectangle here. I'm going to pretend like this is a porch, and I'm just going to do like a white snowy line on top. Need a little bit more white paint, but you get the gist here. You get where I'm going. And all these steps we're doing right now, we're doing intentionally because we're letting our trees dry, because we're going to be putting snow on our trees as our next step. So we're finishing up our house, adding any dark browns, adding a little bit of snow on our railing, making sure our windows are painted in. Okay, love the snowy porch. Very simple little house tucked in the woods. If you want to take a little white paint, if your trees are still drying, and add any more snow, look at this, in the foreground. Remember how we were saying we could add more snow on top of the blue? If you want to add any more white or snowy patches, take a little bit of white paint, put it on your brush, add some more snow, maybe under the house here. I want it to be a little bit more snowy. Add a little bit more in. This is blending in pretty easily. You can have much more thick white paint if you wish. Like taken the inspiration, there's some really thick white areas. You can make it as brilliantly bold like that, or you can blend it in. It's absolutely up to you. Again, this is your painting. I want you to take it in where you want it to go. Just going to get a little bit more white paint, but I hope you're enjoying this. I love how our scene has evolved, and I hope that you are surprising yourself on how your painting has evolved based on your ideas and your own interpretation. Now, in all of our classes, you have the opportunity to add additional elements in if you want to. So if this is too like boring or too simple for you, you want to add more trees. Maybe you want to add like a little deer, or if you want to add like a walking path. Those are all things that you can do. I'm going to keep mine pretty simple tonight. I am going to add a little bit more heavy snow in some areas. So I'm just getting a little bit of extra white paint. But again, the goal is to let your trees dry so we can do snow next on our trees. And we're adding snow right now in that foreground area. So I'm going to take a little bit of extra white paint, and I'll add a little bit of extra snow here and there. So this is thicker. Let's see here. Maybe I'll just do some more snow under here. Some snow piles. And we're also going to add some shading under the trees as well. So maybe this is a little bit of snow in this area. Maybe I just blend it in a little bit. Pretty snowy. You can add as much or as little as you wish. Again, your choice. I made that a little snowy right there. Maybe I'll add another snow patch down here. I'm just using my brush. Maybe it's a little snow pile. You can pick and choose. You can add a little water to your brush if you want to. Totally your choice. You want to use your finger to do any smudging. Sometimes that helps with blending colors. Really fun to do that. So I just added a little bit of extra snow here and there. If you wanted to add a little bit of blue shading under your trees, a really easy thing for you to do. I'm just taking some of that blue lake, and under these trees, you can add a little bit of blue. If you want to make it darker, you can. You can add as much or as little as you wish. Again, you can make it darker, you can do less or more. You can add some more under here. You can always, if you want to lighten it up a little bit, you can always soften the edges with a little bit of white into this blue. If it's too dark for you, you can just soften it with a little bit of white. And I'm doing left, right, kind of scratchy. Bringing that over a little bit. So you can play with how you blend in. I'm going all the way over to the edge. You can bring in some of this blue this way. Again, if I want it to be a little bit more of a blue-gray color, I can just add a little bit of black to it to just dim it down, like not so bright blue. I can just put a little bit in there like that. You can dip your brush in a little bit of water. If you paint anything you don't like, you can easily paint over this. So if you need to like lighten this up again, easy peasy, just grab some white paint. I'm use my finger and just smudge it in a little bit. So it adds a little bit of substance under those trees. I might bring a little bit of snow just on top of this area, a little bit right here to break it up, just a touch. So again, use your eye. If you don't like something you painted, so for me, I want to take away some of this. I feel like I have too much, or maybe it's just not dark enough. You can continue to work on this. A lot of folks, when you paint, you don't realize that your painting is going to evolve over time. And it's okay for you to paint over something. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It's just you're changing the look and the feel. So just know that you can change what you're doing along the way. It's no problem. Just know that and have the confidence that it's okay to make those changes. And I'm just being really playful at the bottom of that tree. I didn't want all that blue there. It wasn't working for me, but it's all good. I have a little bit of shading here and there. I can continue to add more heavy white snow if I wish. But we'll go ahead and add some snow to these trees as the next step. And I'll talk through the style of snow that you can add to these trees, okay? So in the inspiration, there is chunky, heavy, it just snowed 12 inches in our little scene, right? Heavy snow branches. Or you can do a light snow, okay? So I'm gonna go for the heavier look because I like it's fun, kind of chunky look. But you're gonna grab, make sure you have clean white paint and just grab a small brush of choice. And go ahead and get some paint on your brush. Some of you may have already started the snow, but no big deal. And I want you to make sure there's snow. You don't need to cover all the branches. Make sure you can still see. You're going to do the middle of the tree. You're going to do the top side of where branches will be. So I'm kind of working my way down. And you're just going to do a little bit of snow on the top side of branches. The snow application doesn't need to be all the same size. So if I do larger areas, it's going to look heavier. So instead of little brush strokes, which I'm doing some little brush strokes, it's looking like a lighter snow. But if I make them more heavy together, it looks like a heavier snowfall. So you can play with that. Obviously, you know, you can go back in and paint the green, but just, you know, start with a little bit if you want to start with a little. But just make sure you can still see the branches underneath. Don't just cover everything. And my tip is to put a little bit of snow coming down in the middle of the tree, like there's a branch in front of you. So do it from the left, do the middle, and then do the right. And you can see how snowy that tree looks. I tried to do bigger clumps. I don't always do the bigger clumps. You can always go back in and kind of touch it up. I don't want to cover too much of the tree, but that's pretty snowy, right? And again, I can use a smaller brush and be really detailed and go in if I want to, but you get the gist there. I want you to rinse and repeat for all your trees on where you have snow. And then we'll do some fun lighting kind of final touches for our trees as well. So I'm just alternating again, left to the right side, adding snow and little dots and dashes using the tip of the brush. Spin your brush to manage a nice fine point when you're applying the paint. If you apply the paint with a thick, heavy brush tip, it's going to look thicker and heavier. So you have more control of the look and the feel if you manage how the paint is on the end of the brush. That's helpful. So I'm just going to alternate, again, the tip of the tree, alternate from the left to the right side of the tree. And you can see my trees are turning from spruce to snowy spruce pretty quickly here. So go at your own pace. In these classes, we all paint at different speeds, and I might have already said this, but just always take your time. You know, we have the recording available for you to watch again, for you to share with others. For you to go back and look at some of the details. If you missed something, you can decide on how you want to use that. I have very snowy trees.
And I have the recording in the chat in several places, along with the caregiving information.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. So again, your snow can be branch-like, you know, but you can use a small brush and take your time. You can go on the top side of these branches. You can just do little dots in some areas if you don't want to do thick, heavy snow. That's fine too. I'm doing a little bit of both. We tend to develop styles on how we apply snow. I don't do it that often, but sometimes. They all look a little different. But I've definitely just walked through like a snowstorm here versus where I was at before. But we're gonna do another final trip, so don't leave yet. Our classes typically go about an hour and a half to 2 hours. We're pretty close for tonight. We're gonna finish the snow on the branches, and we're gonna add a little bit of orange onto some of these tips on some of the trees to pull in this lightness in the sky. So that's our final step. So hang on with us, and we're gonna finish the snow on the trees, and then we'll do that final step together. If anyone has to leave, we absolutely understand, but I encourage you to hang on for some of our final steps because it's gonna be truly magical. And I'm just using the tip of my brush, going in the middle of the tree, going on the edges of the tree. I want to be sure to see that green underneath. And if you need to go back and bring in some green, absolutely, no problem. That happens, and you can easily do that. But by going down and to the right and to the middle and to the left, it creates that three-dimensional shape, right, of that tree form. And you can do little touches on the tips of these tree branches to bring the branches out a little bit with snow. I have one more lonely little tree back here. Looks like I missed the bottom of this one over here. Here we go. But I'm going to keep this really soft and simple for tonight. I can always come back. So one of the things I love about art is that you can always pick up your painting and make modifications. You can sleep on it and you can add more if you want to, or you can be done. Everybody's going to get a feeling, right? You've all heard an artist say, you know what? I'm not sure if this is done or not. And some of you might be like, yep, I'm done. I'm happy. Loved the class. Thanks, Megan. See you next time, right? So everyone's going to be at different paces. So what I'm going to have you do is finish painting the snow. We're going to mix like a really beautiful orangey yellow color next. And we're going to put it on the left side of each tree, but in the snow. Like, so the sun is reflecting on the left side of each of those trees. And it's going to be beautiful and warm. And I can't wait to show you that step next. So our goal is to let these trees dry. Even if your trees aren't dry, guess what? That's okay. They don't need to be totally dry. Just find a nice small brush and you can mix an orangey yellow color together if you want to try this next step with me. This is optional. If you don't want to do it, it's okay. But make sure your brush is really clean. Let's make sure it's just doesn't have any blue or green on it because we're going to make an orange. Okay. You can always use that paper towel to clean that off. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. If anyone wants to share your painting with me, my email is Megan, which is MEAGAN at paintandsipvt.com. So Megan at paintandsipvt.com. I hope that I would love to see your artwork. I also love sharing it with our friends at AARP New Hampshire. So, and I'd be sure to check out all the links that our friend Linda has posted into the chat window. Sign up for our next class. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to go ahead and make an orangey color here, and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of white so it's softer. And I'm going to do a small touch of a glow in some of the snowy areas on the left side. So I'm just going to do a little bit of an accent. On the left side, wherever there's snow, I'm going to put a little touch. And I want it to be a little more orangey, and I'll bring it close in just a minute. See this glow that I'm creating? Kind of a lemony color. I want it to be, for me, I want it to be a little more orange. The orange is just going to stand out a little bit more. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. Look at that. And just on the left side of just some of these trees, it's just that warmth that's taking over. And again, this is optional. You don't have to do it. I can always paint over something if I don't like it. You can always just do like a little bit of a smudge so it looks a little bit more natural. If you want to mix it with, you know, a little bit more white, that's fine. But this is just a little bit of a gentle glow. And again, I might dim it down a little bit. Mine's pretty heavy in color, but it's really, and if you want to put a little bit of this in the sky, mine's pretty orange, but I'm going to be a little daring here. I'm going to put a little bit of orange in my sky with a little water. I do not advise this at home if you don't want to get a little crazy with me, but I'm putting a little bit of this orangey yellow in the sky behind with a little bit of water. And I'm going to use, I'm going to lighten this up a little bit. It just looks very bold, but you can see what I'm doing here. It's really seizing the light. And this is where spontaneity and experimenting is just a really magical thing. This is pretty bold, but I can dye it down a little bit. But look at the color. Maybe I bring this orangey color like behind here a little bit. Maybe it goes down behind the house a little bit. Isn't that beautiful? So if you don't like that, you don't have to do it. I could always look, take a little bit of white and soften it if I want to. And for me, I did this because I wanted to add a little bit of extra warmth from that sun. And how beautiful. I mean, this is me, right? So I'm my own artist. I have my own style. If you don't want to add any more color in, you don't have to. But I added a little of this orange on my trees and I really liked it. So I brought in a little bit more punchy color into that background. And this is such a great example of letting your art evolve and not overthinking it. This was an idea that I had. This was me being in the moment. And this is something that you can do too. If you kind of get out of your own head, and gosh, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of bravery to not, you know, think you have to do or be one thing or another, but how much fun. I love what this little happy accident happened here with my extra color coming in. For me, that's perfect. I might dim some of these branches down just a little bit in some areas, but I'm pretty close. So everybody's going to get to a point in class where you're going to be done or almost done, or maybe you want to pick this up again tomorrow. Either way, it's absolutely fine. But I do want to thank you all for being here. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those. My email is Megan, MEAGAN, at Paint and Sip BT. I'd love to see your artwork. I'd love to share it with the AARP New Hampshire team. But most importantly, I want to thank you for being here, making time for yourself to practice your creativity, to de-stress. And I hope that this time was enjoyable for you. And again, a big thank you for Linda for having us and being here with us tonight.
You are very welcome, and I'm just posting your email in the chat so people have it.
Awesome. Thank you, Deb, so much for being here. I'm so glad to see you. All right, and I'll hang out for a minute or two. I'm just gonna add a little bit more snow here to my porch. I needed a second coat. All right, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn myself here and say hello to our friends. Thank you all again for being here. Right, take a look at the chat and see if there's any questions. Awesome. Carol, thank you so much. Great to see you. Manuel, great to see you. Thank you for being here. Hope everybody had a great time. Sandra, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you came back and joined us. Marie's here. Jenny, thanks, Jenny. Lots of regulars coming back and joining us. Again, be sure to share this event with someone you feel like that could really enjoy it, whether it's a neighbor or a family member or a friend. We all need sometimes those outlets just to do something a little different. That's you could easily do from home, or maybe you go to their house or they come over. It's always fun to do that. Susan, thank you so much. I'm glad that you're here too. Miss Deborah and Miss Lisa. Lisa, we have water spills. These things happen. I hope you had a towel nearby. Antoinette, thank you so much for being here. Awesome. Well, I encourage you all, again, check out the YouTube. Once you see the recording, subscribe to the AARP New Hampshire channel. They have a lot of really good content there. And be sure to sign up for our next class in April, okay? Oh, Celeste did it in watercolor. Awesome. It was probably beautiful, Celeste.